Hey, this is David for Big Bits, and today is June 3rd of 2020, and I'm going to do a little bit of talk about some TA for some of the different crypto markets today, talk a little bit about the S&P as well, but then we'll go on and talk about some of the TradingView updates. Might talk about some of those as we're doing some of the TA stuff, since we'll be on TradingView anyway, and then also share some of the updates with the Trade Alert Responder application that I've been working on, and it's coming along pretty well. Nothing too visually important over the last couple of days, but some pretty major infrastructure work on the back end on the code that I'm going to share. Okay, so it's been a little while since I've done some TA here, and the charts are absolutely ridiculous. The Bitcoin chart, although it nearly had the bearish engulfing candle, the complete engulfing bearish candle yesterday, still doesn't look too bad. The momentum on some of these indicators going downward isn't really that severe. You could very easily see it turn back up on the stochastic RSI. Not to mention, we're still trading above the moving averages, so if there is a pullback, I would expect that the 50-day moving average would at least be the first stop, and if not, would probably get another bounce off of the 100 and 200 again. But if it goes down there, I'm definitely looking to add more because switch out to the weekly chart here. The weekly chart momentum has been really good. The current week doesn't look too great. If it ends like this, it kind of point towards possibly momentum turning back down. But if it were to fill the candle back up, fill that wick back up, the momentum's going to look crazy. RSI still got plenty of room. The stochastic RSI can stay overbought, and so can the stochastic for a while. You can see that back here. So if we're looking at the weekly chart and we're trying to find a comparison, you want to go back and you want to look at some of these values and see where they're at. And it really, on the stochastic, the current value, which is around here, actually looks a lot like it did here. You're thinking that it might turn over here, but if the week finishes strong, it can continue to rise. And you'll notice here at the peak of it, the stochastic was even going down as the price was going up. So these don't matter too much, but the fact that they have been up and are pointing up is pretty nice to see. And more importantly, the monthly chart. This is where a lot of stuff is going to have to happen to make me be actually bearish. Now let me close some of these indicators. The monthly chart on Bitcoin is absolutely phenomenal. The momentum indicators here, the stochastic and the stochastic RSI, both took a huge jump up. Now, I have mentioned on Twitter and on Discord that in order for the monthly to look bad after the month of June, it's going to have to dump really hard in June because the momentum is up. In order to cancel out that upward momentum, it's really going to have to dump hard. It's going to have to look something like that. And, you know, it's going to have to come down quite a bit, even back towards that 200-week moving average, to be able to kind of negate some of that. And even then, is that momentum really enough to carry it further lower? I personally kind of doubt that. So I'm looking for something like this on the monthly chart. And let me move this back over here. That's kind of what I'm looking for on momentum, and then you'll also see on the MACD kind of have something like that, and on the RSI slowly coming back up here. And where it goes from there, we'll see. We're kind of yet to see, but honestly, the momentum on the monthly chart looks amazing. Now, I don't really usually do monthly TA, but if you had done some of that earlier this year, you would have been really well off. Or last year, I should say. Take those off my chart. Alright, let's take this back to the daily chart here. And by the way, that red line, I did draw that at the very beginning. So that was a forecasted line, and it's kind of eerie how well that played out. I'm trying to get an idea of where things are going to go now, but if I had to guess, it's, well, obviously we're there now, but that's right, this was the brush tool. Something like that is what I would like to see on the daily, but you could also see potentially coming back down here, and if it breaks towards there, it could go down this way as well, and that would take the momentum down pretty far with it as well. So that's what you're kind of going to have to see if the prices are going to go down there, and at that point I would be, like I've mentioned, I would be buying more. So I'm actually going to take that off the chart now. I don't need it anymore. So let's compare that to the S&P. Now the S&P, with all the same indicators, also looks equally ridiculous in its rally since the bottom. And it currently, to me, looks like it is trying to form a top. Now, how close we are to the actual top, I'm not entirely sure. But due to its location in reference to the 200, the 100-day moving averages, it really makes me feel like we're going to have to wait for a bearish divergence, which would mean what I'm kind of thinking is that maybe until the end of the week, price comes up, and then next week it comes back down, and then price goes back up above it even higher. It could even get back up to 33, 3400. But what you'll notice is that the indicators down here are going to go down, but they're not going to come back up as quite as much as they were. And really, this is what I'm really going to be looking for when it comes to a top. So I will be looking for price to be increasing while some of these indicators start to decrease, or have their tops decrease, that is. So I'm going to continue. I've been buying some dividend stocks, some decent ones that I really haven't done too much with stocks, but I have started doing that recently, and I've also started looking into some short ETFs. I really do think that it is going to turn around at some point. It's completely ridiculous, especially if you're thinking in the terms of the market maker. And this is something I talk about several times on the channel, is if you're the market maker and you're doing really well, obviously if you're the market maker, you sold, you pushed the price down, but you also bought very low. But since then, everybody else has been able to hop on board and win. It's a little too easy, but just looking back at history, that just kind of seems to be how the stock market does. There's very little chances for you to be wrong when you long. I know this is going back through a bullish period, but really you're going to kind of want to look for something like that maybe. But this is a daily chart, so this has gone on quite a bit longer than this, so it's hard to say. But it'd be nice to kind of see something like that to shake out some of the longs, and also give those of us who are being more patient a better chance to get in at better prices to be able to hold more for the long run. But I'm going to leave these on this particular chart because I want to see these actually happen, and I'm also kind of, when it comes to the RSI, I'm kind of wanting to see it up here, come down, hover around here as the price goes up, and then we'll see it go down, something like that. It's a little bit harder to draw the RSI, but give me just a moment. I've got something I've got to take care of, and I'll be right back. Okay, sorry about that, guys. So that kind of takes care of Bitcoin and the S&P, but I want to go and look a little bit more than that. So I'm going to actually convert this chart to a single layout now. And I still have the drawing tool on, which is unfortunate because I was meaning to drag that. Now we can see things a little bit better. And I'm trying to think of which one I want to start with here. I think Ethereum is the obvious choice. Let's look at it. It's looking very similar. You'll notice it looks like momentum is wanting to pick back up, even though we're up at the top. And however, you will notice on both Bitcoin and Ethereum, something like this. And I think if the stochastic goes below that, then it's probably going to go down quite a bit. And this too could also see the dip and rise. But we have not tested the 50-day since it broke above, unless you count these two. But they were both at or above the 200-day. So I'm not really sure that would qualify. So kind of the same thing with Bitcoin, looking for it to come down to the 50, possibly the 100 and 200. Let's look at it versus Bitcoin. So I think I drew this line on regular scale. No, maybe. Yeah, I think I did draw this on regular scale for some reason. And it definitely looks like it's trying to break out versus Bitcoin, and oddly enough, the chart itself looks a lot like how it does versus USD, and that the momentum is looking to pick back up while it's already pretty high. So could see a large move if things start to pick back up again soon. But just going back in through history here for it, it is at this level of resistance that used to be support on the prices here, but we have already beaten that before or poked through it somewhat. Maybe you're looking for actual resistance up here, because this level seemed to be pretty important as well. That's what, 30,000 Satoshis around that. So you get back above that, then it can really move. And when you look at the weekly chart, let's see, the weekly chart looks really good. So if you pair that with the daily chart, I think things look really well to continue to move up, at least to the 50, not the 50, this is the 50, the green one, the yellow one, which is the 100-week moving average. That one looks really good to me as a first stop for it, and it can obviously go beyond that. Now this is that 30,000 Satoshi range around here. That one will be interesting. You can see that it did a fake out here below that range, came back above it, and it turned back into support. But then it broke, and then it tried to act like a fake out, but the support then turned to resistance, and it's been trading below that level ever since. So I'm actually going to mark on this chart that's actually a pretty key level. Just a moment. So that's something I'm going to watch if it breaks that. And actually, I'd like to see another chart that actually has a little bit more history. So let's see, Bitstamp. Not sure if there is much more on this. Poloniex probably goes further back. Yeah. Oh my goodness, it's been a while since I've looked at this chart, but it's got a lot of the same information that I had on it before. I'm not sure why I put that line. It seems kind of out of place. So I'm going to remove that. And you can see where this was support. It is now resistance. It looks like that's what I was kind of looking for there. But the 200 is up here around 0.04. Now, was I reading the chart right earlier? Okay. Was I looking at the wrong thing? Oh well. Anyway, point remains that you're looking at this level. It's a pretty key level currently, and then also this level here, and then you get the 200 there. All right, I want to get off of this one. I'm confusing myself right now on something that I did. All right, so I'm gonna go back to Litecoin. It's usually the third one that I take a look at here. Momentum is very similar to the other ones. It is also playing around at some former support and resistance levels right now. Probably the key one you'll notice is from the major bear market after 2017. That key level, which was support for a long time, only was briefly resistance before it came back up, but it also acted as support here. It hasn't really meant much since then, but there is a lot of price activity around this level. It's something to watch, especially as the moving averages have kind of coiled in tightly in this cluster. If it does break up, it could be a pretty dramatic move. And let's go ahead and take a look at the weekly as well versus the dollar. The Litecoin weekly chart versus the dollar looks really good. I would say it's headed towards the cluster up here as momentum looks to be picking up on all of the different time frames. Is the daily my preferred time scale, or I just use 4 to 1 hour much? So it kind of depends. I usually do daily for the most part, but once you get into, so let me go back and show you the S&P and go back to the daily here. So I am talking about a potential daily divergence here, and I will actually switch to the shorter time frames once it starts to look like there's a divergence there, because if you can find a divergence on the daily chart and then you also find another one on like a 4-hour or a 1-hour chart, you can do pretty good at finding a top or a bottom there, at least in my opinion. But it's easy to get caught in bad trades on 1 and 4-hour time frames. 4 hours not so much. 1 hour you can definitely get burned on big moves, especially on crypto stuff. So I usually stick to daily because I'm actually pretty busy. I don't have a lot of time to do this. That's why I develop trading bots and things to handle that for me. And I'm currently working on one now so that when I do get this completed, the software completed, it'll be able to do that for me on these shorter time frames so that I don't have to sit and babysit it so much. Okay, so Litecoin on the daily. Okay, I've already talked about Litecoin on the daily. I think I even started talking about it on the weekly. Yes, its momentum looks really good on the weekly. Let's look at it versus Bitcoin. Very similar as far as the momentum is concerned, although it is trading below all 3 key moving averages, which the other, which Ethereum wasn't. So that's something to watch out for. There is that potential resistance. You have former support here, former support here. There's just a lot of volume in this range, where if it breaks out of there, it could be really good, especially considering the weekly chart. And let's take a look at the weekly. Now this, you're hoping for momentum to turn around here. This is probably a spot where I would consider to DCA in. Your momentum is at the bottom. It looks like it's wanting to turn up, but there's always a good chance when you're looking at momentum like that, it could turn back down, go down even further, form that divergence, and then come back up. So that's why I would usually start to DCA here on the first approach, because even if it does turn profitable immediately, you can take profits on the smaller amount as opposed to none at all. All right, go back to the daily. Think of another one I want to look at want to take a look at Raven coin. Wanted to look more at some of the proof of work coins out there, and this chart actually reminds me a lot of some of the tokens I've seen where they have climbed in price very steadily versus the dollar, but have not had their kind of breakout moment. You can see it's been fighting this former support, now turned resistance level. There's a lot of activity there. Raven coin got down to what, like, is that right? What's the low there? It got less than a penny. It was almost 0.8 of a penny. Wow, they got pretty cheap, and considering now it's at 2, it's more than doubled in price. That's a pretty good move. Found a bottom comparative to back here. You could even call that a lower bottom. Although that's not much, there is an incline there, so that's good. That has a lot of potential. It's at 2 cents, previous highs around 7. It doesn't have as much potential as some other coins, but it's definitely got a lot. Let's take a look at it. Oops, take a look at it on the weekly as well. This chart reminds me of the S&P as far as the stochastic and stochastic RSI, both pointing up pretty dramatically on the weekly, but it's pretty clear when you're looking at the weekly chart that you're working with this support turned resistance now. Although it does appear that it might be able to get out of that, get to about that 50, but you also have some more resistance here, but not nearly as much. All right, let's take a look at it versus Bitcoin. Take a look at this on the daily first. So it's similar to the other coins where it's looking to flip the momentum around, but this one's a little bit lower, serving below all 3 key moving averages. We'll see how that plays out. That one doesn't look nearly as strong, considering on this chart it's at all-time lows. Let me see if I can find another chart that's got a little bit more history. So I'm on Binance, Bittrex. There you go. Bittrex has a little bit more history, although it is around all-time lows versus Bitcoin. You'll see it's at 213 Satoshis. Its all-time high was around 1,600, so that's what, 8-time gain. So you could potentially get 8 times your Bitcoin out of that, although I find that highly unlikely. If it does break out, it does have a huge move. It's more likely going to find a top around here, which is still about 4.5 times, which is really good. Let's take a look at the weekly chart. This one looks like it's been accumulating for a very long time. So just purely based off of TA, I actually really like this one on the weekly chart, because I think you actually have a divergence here with the stochastic RSI. Your RSI seems to have flatlined. Like a lot of altcoins, it seems like a pretty decent time to DCA versus Bitcoin. And one thing that is really interesting about this one is that it actually has this trend down on the stochastic. So if it breaks that, could go up quite a bit. All right, so let's see if there's another one I want to take a look at. I want to take a look at basic attention token. I always take a look at it. And I think we just talked about this earlier, how it's had a steady rise. All of the altcoins kind of look like this versus USD right now on their momentum, potentially turning back up. The good thing about basic attention token, it is above all 3 key moving averages, so that's good. Go back and take a look at the weekly. Momentum is continuing to climb up. This seems like a pretty important week for basic attention token, because it is looking to potentially close above its 100-week moving average, which would be huge. So give me just a moment. I've got to take care of something. I'll be right back. Okay, I'm back for now. So, wow, where did this come from? Alright, so back to my thought process here. This one looks really good if it can close above those moving averages on the weekly chart. If there were one much longer than this, it'd be hard to predict. I'd say it'd be around the same spots. You got a lot of cluster on these moving averages. I'm trying to think where resistance might be on this one. I think it's kind of at resistance right now, honestly. Although you can also see there's some more resistance here, but looking back, I think it's currently at resistance because of this particular area. And then, of course, you have the most recent resistance of around 27 cents, something like that. But it's been a while since it has visited overbought territory on the RSI, which the last time it went overbought on the RSI put it with a high of 50 cents. So that's what I'm kind of looking for on basic attention token. I'm looking for the next time the RSI gets overbought. It's hanging in there really well. It's at a higher low there on the close. Yeah, so that was a higher low on the close. It did wick below that. I wish I was able to buy that at the time. I missed it. It happened really quick. All right, so let's take a look at it versus Bitcoin. Similar stuff here. This also looks similar to some of the others, but its momentum has already surpassed the other ones, and it looks like it's already moving up as opposed to potentially moving up on some of the other coins and tokens out there. It is facing resistance. This is a pretty key level in the past, apparently, as you can see. But if it can close back above the 200, things could get pretty interesting. So let's take a look at its weekly versus Bitcoin. And this is another one of them that I really like because momentum is shooting up. This one, here's another reason why. It had this kind of channel down in kind of multiple areas, and it's seeming to be breaking out of that. So perhaps it will come back up here, which is another resistance level on the weekly chart versus Bitcoin to 3,200 Satoshis, around that level. And that also happens to be around where the 100-week moving average is as well. So if it closes above the 50, I'm pretty much thinking it's almost certainly going to the 100-week, but of course that's not trading advice, so no financial advice here. Alright, I'd like to think of another one here. I've done a few different ones today. I'll just pull up CoinMarketCap and see what we got going on. Ripple, that's one I always forget about, but I usually end up doing. Yeah, we'll use Bitstamp. Let's go to the daily chart. This is versus the dollar. Somewhat similar to the other ones we're looking at, but it's only trading at 20 cents. Really nothing too important here. Let's take a look at it versus the weekly. It's trading below key moving averages. Momentum pointing up though. For it to be bullish, I'd want it to close above its 50-week at least, but it doesn't look as promising as some of the other ones we've looked at, I'll put it that way. Let's take a look at it versus Bitcoin. Let's go to the daily chart first. The daily chart looks pretty bad. I'll go ahead and say it looks pretty bad. It's already really low. Moving averages are pointing down in all directions, and that's pretty recent too. They're pretty level here and neutral, but they've been going down recently. Momentum doesn't look good. There's not a lot of good stuff here when you look at the daily chart. Let's take a look at the weekly. Now the weekly is not so bad if you're wanting to be a longer term trade here. Like I've mentioned before, this is around what I would consider to DCA in. You also have momentum moving up, although it is from the entire bottom. It is moving up as the price goes down, so that's something that kind of throws a flag to me. Something might be up. All right, see if I can take a look at something else here. I want to take a look at crypto coin. This one has been pretty interesting. CRO. Yeah, this one's pretty incredible. It's been doing really well lately, and there's a lot of reason why. People are wanting to get into crypto, but Crypto.com, they offer a huge interest rate on on things that you hold there, especially when you stake with their token. And the CRO is their token, so you can see it's been doing really well versus the dollar lately, and I would look for a divergence here before I would even consider to short it, and I would probably really want to go long if it has a dip. Wow, you could have got it for 2 cents. Let's see what the low was that day. Yeah, 2.3 cents. Wow. It's went up almost 50 times just this year from its lows. That is incredible. Let's take a look at it on the weekly chart. It's kind of insane. That is doing really well. I'm not sure. Just looking at the weekly chart, it's hard to say when that might stop. It's pretty much at all-time highs, mainly because apparently that is its starting price. It looks like if there was an ICO, I don't know too much about the coin's history, but if this was its starting price from like its ICO or whatever, it dropped immediately since then. So I don't really consider that the all-time high or that, because they didn't close up there, but it did pop up considerably. Give me just a moment. Got something else to take care of.